What's going on?
We are just discussing what it means to unveil our inner wisdom. And Asia was just reflecting on the importance of actually allowing that, not looking at metrics, not measuring how productive she was, um, which sent me off on a complete like, yes, maybe the first 2 minutes after your 3 minutes of being purposefully nothing is actually measuring the nothingness that you achieved. So, how do you find the concept of your inner wisdom? And is it something that you are able to find, to connect with, and do you allow it into your life?
Hmm, great question. Um, hmm, I sure hope I let it into my life. That's a definite, right? Um, oh my God, I think I want to say I'm working with this, and because I've had a lot of situations come to me lately that have been testing me, and I don't catch them when they first arrive. So it's kind of I go through the motions from the old place, and it's not. It's like I needed time to process, and I didn't get to process what's going on. So when they actually pop up and they come in like that, it's at the moment still, I'd say, some old parts playing their roles where I'm looking to step into that place and take my power back from whoever gave me ways of being or whatever it was that played out in my past, and actually being present in that time to respond with and from the person that I am today. So there's a real big piece, and I've been having a lot of situations lately, man. So great question, and it just
You said when you first joined us, you hoped were letting in this inner knowing. And before you arrived, we kind of identified a common theme that there was a perhaps a necessity for stillness, and to have some time to ourselves in order to hear this inner knowing. So is that something that you seek out? Do you have a way of um, you being in nature or getting up early, staying up late, various options that we heard before? How do you go to that place of inner knowing?
um I will tell you right now, I was turning my other speaker on because my computer was giving feedback like it always does, and I realized I didn't have my other speaker on, so I did miss some of your question. So I'm not really fully clear.
Before you arrived, we mentioned that there are ways that we find of working with our inner wisdom. Could be being up late, early, being out in nature, but there is a common theme that we find time to ourselves when we're most in connection with that inner wisdom, inner knowing. So the question is, how do you connect with yours, which you said at the outset you hoped you were letting in?
Um, that's the unsure piece. Like I know when I'm out on the motorcycle and I'm just riding, I have a lot of um, different things, and I have space to process, and that gives me that. And being in nature, is great. Just going for a walk in the woods or a nice trail, building a fire. definitely building a fire. Um, yeah, yeah. I'd say the motorcycle and building a fire are my two go-tos. Um, and it's great because building a fire, I love bringing people around it so they get to experience that. Whatever it is for me, maybe they can experience the same. And I'll pose certain questions or I'll say certain things, and usually people that are close to me or that do know me, they will play along. Like I'll ask, even if it's something like now and they're not used to me asking a question, they'd be like, and they'd pause and they would think about it and they would actually answer, you know, as best as they can, right? And they might laugh at it and be like, I gotta think more, whatever it is. Um, so, uh, yeah, I've done a couple cool things around the fire actually. And I had some friends really have some experiences and just kind of wander around my yard after and come back to the fire. It was just some good things. Yeah.
You weren't here at the outset when we mentioned the name that we'd come to for the podcast, and as he has just mentioned in the chat, Wise-Mind Fireside Chats for unveiling inner wisdom. So, having come in a very figurative way, and now then literally led us to Fireside Chats, what question might you pose now as we are in a circle around the fire?
Mm. I don't know. I'm sitting around the fire, and that's where the question evokes from. As I'm sitting there, it gives my mind the space. Um, there you go. You guys are funny. uh,
There are no
um,
excuses in this podcast. Well, you need fire. We just gave you fire. So
oh, we got a real fire right there. um, hmm. uh, I'm not really sure at the moment. Like I did experience a talking to myself in 5 years and have worked that through with the guys that I'm tight with, and that was pretty cool. There's other parts of it that we're probably going to bring into it because there's always the good side, but then there's shadow side, there's all different parts. But yeah, that was a pretty cool thing, and then some questions with it. So you're just asking the questions and whatnot. Um, yeah, I'm not really sure what question I would ask right now if we were sitting around the fire.
So one question that comes up to me for this is, why are we looking? We're asking ourselves how we connect with this inner wisdom, or how we unveil the inner wisdom, which is certainly a useful idea to have for each of us as an individual, and anyone that's listening. But for what purpose are we seeking this inner wisdom? And I leave that open to the floor.
to make the decisions that are going to best serve me. I think that's when I seek it out the most. I also seek it out when I'm processing through any kind of challenges that I might be having, right? To sort of like a check myself kind of thing. Is this really, really, really something that's upsetting to me, or is this my mind making me feel like I should be upset? So I will refer to it. And if I have that nagging feeling in my deep in my belly, like in my gut, then I know, no, this is legit. This is something that I need to speak on or figure out how to move through. If that eventually go, and I give it time, it's not an immediate process for me personally. I have to allow it some time and space to continue talking so that I can tell the difference.
Something that we don't actually have a lot of. It's a common complaint in modern life, isn't it? No time, no time, no time. And yet, how do we access it? In a place of peace and stillness for us. Why do we want it? Because it's most revealing of what's correct for us. And how does it come? It's not always in an instant flash of inspiration. It might take sitting around a fire, going for a motorbike ride, going for a walk. And it seems that inner wisdom is most effective for us as individuals. And yet it's hard to find and create the space and place for it.
You know, I don't want to interrupt you, but this is why I said earlier that I feel like it's always talking for me, because in the busyness of life, I don't need to have, because there are days that I might not find the time to just be quiet and whatever. So it's always on. It's just always talking, and I allow it to do that, whether I give it the set time or not. And I love the idea of knowing that I can just, it's always with me. Like I could take it with me. It's not like I have to be home. It's just always hanging out with me. So I kind of like that idea that it's just always with me.
Yeah, and what I find interesting now from the conversation we had, looking back at everything, that it's again our own choice how we connect with that wisdom, and we have quite different ways. And I love what Ashia said, to actually just permit us to do so. And it was funny, the reaction. I cannot sit down for 15 minutes because how do I measure I was productive? That's already getting out of the wise mind or the inner intuition already again. Because how do you even measure your inner wisdom? It's not something you can measure. You may know you're getting there when you get the outcomes in your life you want to have, but it's an ongoing process. And there is no end goal. As long we are alive, as long as things are happening to us, as long we are processing, as long we have to tap into this inner wisdom all the time, and it can change quite a lot depending on our life circumstances.
For me, I know I'm not listening to my intuition if it's taking me a long time to decide what I'm doing. My intuition is pretty much, no, I know that this is what I'm supposed to do, and that's just it. Or I know I'm not supposed to be in this room because I don't like the way it feels, or whatever. If I'm struggling or I can't come to a decision, I immediately know my intuition has yet to actually speak or has yet to be heard by me.
Asya.
I'm thinking of your question, for what purpose are we even searching? And my personal best guess would be to measure / evaluate / sense whether you're being true to yourself. By the risk of using a list of buzzwords such as authentic and all that kind of stuff, just differentiating from behavior, thoughts, and feelings you're experiencing due to external stimuli, or is that something that's true to you? Is that something that your inner whatever is telling you? And for me, that, funny enough, that only recently has become a challenge. Before, I was always right, and I was pretty content with the way I was. Not saying that was a good way to be, just it didn't bother me to even consider self-reflecting and assessing where I'm at. But the more I learned, the more I realized how little of my original thoughts I have, how little, again, buzzwords, but authentic and congruent, but how little of what I'm doing and what I'm thinking is actually mine. And that still hurts, that realization, but at least it paves the new path of that exploration and rigid differentiation for purposes and reasons for doing something due to external factors in comparison to your true innate calling and purpose and beliefs. That's one thing. I'll come back to you with another thought.
You put me in mind of the UB40 song, Higher Ground. The more I know, the less I learn, or the more I learn, the less I know, the more I want to look around. And I think that's part of this inner wisdom. We all have it. We can all tap into it in various ways, some easier than others. But if we listen, there's always more to ask, more to ponder, more to open ourselves up to. So, Brett, coming back to you. Oh, I see. Did you have your second? Go on.
Thank you for bringing that back to me. The idea was that having that, you asked, how do we know if we have inner wisdom, or if it's there, or if it's working, or if it's functioning? And to connect the previous conversation with this idea, I would suggest the presence of inner wisdom can be measured by the existence of those self-reflecting processes. If you're capable of, I wouldn't say constantly, but from time to time, evaluating where you are, where you're going, what you're doing, how aligned you are with your values and thoughts and desires, that would be one of characteristics of, in my personal point of view, of presence of that inner wisdom. If you're thinking of that, if you're reflecting, it means that to some extent it's there. And if not, what do we do then? That would be my question.
We'll pin that question just while I ask Brett for his response, if he has one, to for what purpose are we accessing this inner wisdom?
What purpose are we? Inner wisdom. I guess to live our fullest lives and connect to the people on a deep level, to of acceptance, right, of each other. So just connecting on that deeper level of accepting, supporting, and moving through our regular, mundane, right, routines. If we're not aware and we're just moving through life and just doing things, then we're missing out on the connection that I believe we should be experiencing. Another should, right? But I think it's important that we have these connections and these deeper experiences, so that in moving through life, you have the people you know that you're supporting and supporting you, and the people to go to in your hard times. I think if we had more connection like that, there'd be less people in such hard places if they were aware of the people in their lives that were really there, and that they're not alone. Right. So there's a really big piece there that if we go there and we experience it with people, then those are our go-to people that we can be whatever we are, share whatever emotion we have, and they'll just listen. Or instead of just throwing responses out, they would ask, right? Because they feel that you're in that spot. So it's just allowing you and them to be in the space of knowing, how can I support you? And once you're in that space enough, then you're going to know what they need is support. That won't be a question anymore. So once you're there and experiencing that level of inner wisdom and knowing what people need, then that question tends to sit on the side because you already learned what each person needs. And you may ask it again just to verify, hey, look, I may usually do X, Y, Z, but I feel like something different is up right now, and I just want to clarify how it is that I can support you. And they may step into that, or they may, whatever it is. It's just giving them that opportunity to know that I'm there for you, right? And it's really seeing what they need, because maybe they don't want you saying anything. Maybe they just want to talk and get it all out. Well, I think that's something important that we need to know. So,
I think it's like a beautiful connection. That connection seems to be the theme here, but to be able to use your inner wisdom requires deep connection with yourself, right? And it's only until you have that deep connection with yourself that you can offer that to somebody else fully, right? So your intuition comes into play, your inner wisdom comes in there to play as well in building connection, because you're building it with yourself to build that wisdom, right? And then that wisdom and connection is what you offer to other people. So it's just funny the way it feeds into each other. But as you guys were talking, a whole nother thing came to me about how for me personally, how do you know if your intuition is leading you or not, or working or not, right? And for me, it's a definite mind, like it's a body connection. It's in my body. So if I'm feeling a discomfort, like a physical sort of pain reaction, I know, okay, my intuition is probably trying to scream at me that something isn't right. And I'm just not either willing to hear it or can't hear it, or am blocking myself from listening to it. It's going to cause me physical pain. And I have this idea that life is challenging. Life is a struggle, right? There's nowhere written that we're not going to struggle, that life is just going to be easy. So the struggle is part of life. However, we don't need to suffer through it, right? So when you don't listen to your intuition, you are suffering. That's what I know to be true, because it causes me pain when I'm not. And that's my first inclination. Okay, I'm not aligned here. I'm not listening to something because I'm feeling stress in my stomach. I'm feeling tense. I'm feeling irritated. Like it's just, I'm not aligned. Let me tap in to my intuition and maybe at least allow it to talk to me. I might not be willing to do what it tells me right now, but I need to listen to it so that my life doesn't have to be a suffering kind of life. I can still struggle and deal with the challenges that are going to help me to grow, but I don't have to be in pain while I'm doing it. That's my personal take on how I operate with my intuition.
Yeah, I really like that. And it brings in for me my purpose. My purpose really is, at this stage of my life, just to have peace. And peace doesn't mean that I sit around doing nothing, or not in a kind of Zen way of peace, but being aligned with what I'm doing. And the minute I'm in peace, it doesn't matter what life throws at me. You know, when we talk about locus of control, even when things come up from outside, they don't face me. I go like, okay, this has happened now. All right, what's the solution? And I work toward that solution, and I'm getting the outcomes, and it's coming from this kind of state of peace. I think we often think peace means we're like a Buddhist monk sitting somewhere meditating, but for me, peace is just simple being in a space where I can face anything which comes up for me without getting stressed or panicked or, you know, in a state where I can't handle it. So that's for me the peace. And I think that's my purpose for actually going on a journey of inner wisdom.
So to concisely answer the question of your purpose in tapping into your intuition, for me, after listening to you, Gabby, my purpose is freedom. That's it. In a nutshell, I tap in and am eager to allow it to lead me so I can get to this place of freedom, you know, of time, of energy, of my emotions, you know, whatever. It's just freedom to choose to do what I want in a way that serves me. That's my answer. Final answer.
We'll lock that one in. You know, back in January, when some of us met up with Kane and Karen in Scotland, one of the pearls of wisdom that I received was let peace be your umpire, because we can find states of flow where we are working at our best, whether that be the night owl or the early morning lark. We can find the locations that serve us and that work and bring alignment to our goals and the people and the groups and the collaborations that we want to work with. And by acknowledging that we do have a voice other than that inner critic that is helpful and can guide us, we're able to find that place and space of letting peace be the umpire. And as Gabby said right at the outset, there's a ton of books that will help us find our element, find flow, find what works for us, whether it be the 5 a.m. club or the midnight club. But actually finding people that you can work with, be connected with, be in flow with, I think that's one of these purposes. It enables us to have conversations like this. It enables us to bring these things to other people. And what I'd like to do actually now is take Asia's question, which was, what happens if you can't find that inner voice, and open that up to conversation with the rest of the group. So I'm going to ask for any closing thoughts from each of you, and then we'll open the conversation up to the wider group with Asia's question. So in alphabetical order, Asia, any final thoughts before we go to the group?
I have one thought. I was thinking on it since the whole podcast started on actual practical mechanisms to cultivate that inner wisdom. And as I was running around the house, finally consolidated into something I can articulate. And funny enough, it's about articulation. There are two ways of processing things: external, by expressing them, and a bunch of other that you do internally without having to find the language. I don't have much wisdom on internal ones. I'm still exploring all possibilities there, but I do know a fair share of external processing. And what ecology does for all of us as a huge favor and deal is offering all these tools, all these principles and ideas and structures that by no means limit us, but sometimes they can help us articulate what's happening inside. And also by simply initiating, without even all of the ecology knowledge aside, by simply engaging in a meaningful conversation when two parties have the goal to understand each other, it provokes this search for ways to express yourself. And I found this over the years extremely helpful for inner work. When you do your best to explain yourself to a person that you know respects you and values you and you want to be understood, subtly it forces you to find words, to find structures that can describe what's going on inside of you, what kind of experience you had and how it have affected you, and all that kind of stuff. So on the practical side, I would suggest just one of the many ways to train your inner wisdom would be simply experience exchange. The process itself will gently force you and invite you to explore without even you knowing, and your bike or fire time will do the rest when you have worked on those terms.
Yes, using modern applied psychology to offer a framework that allows you to explore the inner landscape. I like that. Brett, final thoughts?
Final thoughts. More conversations, I guess, and connecting to the parts of ourselves that we don't even realize how important they are until we actually take the time to connect to those parts. And you may find that in somebody that you have a conversation with, and you have the opportunity to explore that. So the things that you may judge as something you don't want to talk about, or you don't want to, because it's corny or it's whatever the word is, right, that you use, those are probably the things that you should bring up. And there's another should, right? But there's an opportunity in bringing those things that we say we should not do. There's a reason why that we should not do, and there's more of a reason why we should, to explore what the not piece is. And you might find that there might be a nugget of gold in that knot that we've never explored and we never received. So by going into those places, you may unveil this really golden, piece of whatever it is for each individual. So there's something in exploring those places and those things. So leave it at that.
Thank you. Exploring with modal operators the nuggets of gold that perhaps are hidden in the shadow. And the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. Erika.
So final thoughts on this podcast as a whole, or specific to the question of what do we do if we can't tap in?
Oh, we're going to go with that question to the group. So your final thought on the conversation.
Okay, so my final thoughts in general are, what I know to be true about intuition and inner wisdom is that it'll never steer you wrong. It's always got your best interest at its forefront. So because of that, it feels scary to trust it, right? It's almost like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean? There's something that I can't see or touch or feel, and I just have to believe in that has my best interest at its forefront. Somewhere along the way, we were taught to not trust ourselves. Somebody told us and taught us that we can't be trusted in making decisions for ourselves, or in however it came to be, directly or indirectly. And allowing your inner wisdom to show up in its full power is completely obliterating that teaching, right? So it's time for us to take that back and learn to, I'm fully equipped with everything I need to know to steer me where I need to go. I just need to trust it and allow it to exist. My inner wisdom told me to accept the invitation to be on this podcast today. And again, it did not steer me wrong. So I am happy to trust it and just not work so hard to have to listen to it, because it's always there.
I think it was Glenn Ford. I might need to correct the name later on, but he did a longitudinal study of genius, starting with, I think they were 4-year-olds. And at that age, well into the 90% of children are recognizably genius. By the time they reach adulthood, 25 and older, the number of, or the percentage of genius is down to around about 3 or 4%. And the biggest single drop at that any point in that study is at the end of mainstream education, where they've just gone off the Seneca cliff, as it were, of ability to be genius. Gabby, this has been our first Wi-Fi chat. What would you like to wrap it up with, and final thoughts?
And my final thoughts really are that, yeah, we can sit at home and think about what we need and try and find our inner wisdom and let our inner wisdom talk. But how much more helpful is it to actually share our thoughts, get the insights and wisdom of other people, of their experiences, and talk about it? Because sometimes we are too much in our own heads, and that's why we go down rabbit holes we don't want to go down, because we cannot see a way out, or we think we're the only ones and are not even aware of that other people may have similar struggles. So to come together as a community talking about this is important, and that's probably why I'm thinking right now these fireside chats are helpful. And if we can do it in a way where we can get together and other people can join in, like we're going to do now, is absolutely brilliant. And it was a real fireside chat, wasn't it? My dog started barking. People had to go run off because something was happening. I had to close the window because all the neighbors are starting working. And it's just brilliant. And even with all these disturbances, because sometimes you think, oh, we can't do this, it needs to be perfect, we have the right microphone and the right lighting, and people have to be there in time and then stop. Look how deep this conversation went. And maybe it goes deeper when we just feel we can chat to friends rather than try and be perfect, because then we start performing. And I did a lot on public speaking. That's where it goes usually wrong, when we think we have to perform when we speak rather than have a chat with everybody. That's my final thoughts.
Thank you very much. My final thought is very much along the line of yours, Gabby, which is, if we have a space in which we can bring our thoughts to be mulled over, to be shared with other people who have similar connection and who've taken on the path of wisdom and maturity, we get a wise mind even beyond listening to our own wise mind, and recognizing that the stories that we potentially tell ourselves are very different from that wise mind that we can tap into. So with no further ado, we will ask the others to consider Asia's question. If we recognize that the wise mind is a thing and we're not sure how we connect with our own, what should we do and how can we approach that problem?